Good evening, Michael. How are you?
Good evening. How are you, Scott?
Pretty good overall. I'm not going to whine too much about my health tonight, hopefully.
Okay.
Um, but I do have some news that you'll be interested in because, and I'll talk about it a little bit more
Okay.
as we roll through the meeting. But we are going to be postponing that July event.
Oh, that's sad.
Um, yeah, I'll talk a bit more on details when we get going. But just kind of had to happen.
Okie dokie.
Let me see what's going on here. All right, let me see what's going on here. It looks like my machine or my Zoom quit and then reconnected again. Um, we are still live streaming. It closed my chat window and my participant window. That was weird. All right. I'm hoping you all can hear me. Yeah, my mic looks like it's working. Okay.
You're good.
We'll give it another minute or two, see if anybody else joins the room. And it looks like my sound is out. I don't hear anything or anyone. Let me see if I can reset my headphones. All right, let me try that again. Can somebody say hello?
Hello,
Hello.
hello.
Perfect. All right, thank you for that. All right, that's like twice. I don't know if it quit last night. It was another meeting I had, and then it just sort of quit on me and then rebooted. We're at 7:02. How close to 7:03? And we got another half a minute. Okay, the YouTube looks like it's still running. All right. All right, we are tick, 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 just about 7:03 right now. We might as well get rolling and get things going. Um, I'll start by saying good evening. My name's Scott Weldon with the South Carolina chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, also known as NORML. All of our meetings are an environment of education and awareness and are not an open market for the sale, purchase, or distribution of cannabis. We do not encourage or condone illegal behavior of any kind. Y'all behave now. I want to sort of start by, as I usually do, welcoming everybody who's joined me here on the Zoom call, anybody who might be watching our live stream on the the YouTube. Let me sound like an old guy on the YouTube now once. And also welcome to anybody who's watching this as a recording on YouTube later on. With that said, if we are not monitoring the comments section on YouTube, so if you do have any comments, questions, concerns, you can leave them down below on the in the comments, and we will try and check them within about the next 24 hours after YouTube does whatever it does when we're done with our live stream, and see if we can respond to your comments, questions, and or concerns. I also want to sort of start off a little bit with apologizing to anybody who may have joined us last night and now has joined us again tonight, because tonight's really kind of just a repeat of the the first part of last night's meeting. We did our monthly normal meeting last night, which we have on the third Tuesday of every month. And so once a month, it sort of falls a day before our cannabis conversations. And in our agendas, we went over federal updates, federal legislative updates, state legislative updates, and what we do at the chapter level. Tonight, our main subject is really the federal update. So if you did join us last night, you don't have to stay and torture yourself through it. There is a little bit of information I do want to share after I go over the update about what's going on with the upcoming cannabis convocation. Again, not real big news, except the fact that we will be postponing it. It's still going to be held, but we've found, we'll go into details, but we think it's going to be a little bit more effective on a different date. With that said, let me go ahead and just sort of kind of go over this week's, the most recent update from national level. Some of you may have seen some posts about a couple of these items on our Facebook and or other social media sites. But the first piece of legislation, one second, somebody's coming to the door, honey. There you go. Is a bill by Representative David Joyce and Don Young, representatives. They've introduced legislation to move marijuana from the Federal Controlled Substances Act, thereby repealing federal prohibition of cannabis and making states the primary regulators of the plant. The bill would deschedule marijuana from the Controlled Substances Act, create explicit safe harbor so that licensed cannabis business can bank with financial institutions. Other provisions in the measure allow military veterans to access state legal marijuana programs, direct the National Institute of Health to facilitate more expansive research into cannabis and its effects, and direct the Food and Drug Administration, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Tax and Trade Bureau, and the Department of Treasury to promulgate regulations pertaining to labeling and regulating of cannabis in a manner that would be similar, in quotes, to alcohol. What I'm going to do here real quick is drop a couple of links down here into the chat. One is the blog post about this bill. The other is an action alert about this bill. You'll see them both linked in this in the chat. So you can go and read a little bit more about it. The one thing I do want to point out, not sort of listed on my information in front of me here, is that unlike the MORE Act from last session that the Senate passed in December, this does not have any harm reductions written into it. No expungement, no reinvestment, none of that stuff. It is, just removing from the Controlled Substances Act. And kind of as the name of it states, the name of this legislation is the Common Sense Cannabis Reform for Veterans, Small Businesses, and Medical Professionals Act. Again, you can read a little bit more about it on the blog. But that is what is currently been proposed by Republican legislators at the federal level. That is, I believe, a House bill. Let me go see if I can look at that real quick. Yes, House bill. So that's one big piece of legislation that's recently been introduced. The next I'd like to talk about is called the GRAM Act, GRAM Act. That's been introduced. That was introduced again by Representative Don Young, who was one of the co-sponsors of the aforementioned legislation. The GRAM Act stands for is HR 2830. That one I actually have a number on. And that one is known as the Gun Rights and Marijuana Act. And that's where they get the GRAM, which is seeking to formally protect Second Amendment rights of Americans living in states that have legalized marijuana. That is states that have legalized marijuana. So this would not apply in South Carolina at this time. Under current law, those that consume medical or recreational cannabis in legal jurisdictions can face blatant discrimination by having their constitutionally guaranteed right to purchase and possess a firearm denied entirely, regardless of its completely legal status in those areas. This directly impacts the constitutional rights of Americans in nearly every state. I do not have a blog post information on that one, but we do have an action alert on that as well. That is one where, again, you can write your legislators. The fourth bit of legislation or activity going on at the federal level here, did I say fourth? Third piece, it has to do with appropriations. The main push of expanding the Department of Justice spending restriction is expanding the Department of Justice spending restriction that we've seen. I'm trying to remember the name of that offhand. Basically, that doesn't allow federal money to be spent in legal states to go after legal cannabis businesses. I thought that had a particular name on it. I am not seeing it here in front of me. So we have a slate of amendments that we're pushing. Our Senate allies are skittish without having received the president's budget, which is only means that we have to drive them with even more pressure. Here's a memo on the requested appropriations, and also appropriations that are they're in effect on some of them and would need to be either renewed and or there are proposed ones. I'll go over them real quick. I just dropped the link in there if you'd like. We're going to go over this just kind of quickly. And you know what? I can do a share screen with you if it makes it easier for you to view these. Good, that's what I'm looking for. All right, so here's our memo on this is the advanced rational appropriations efforts in regards to state legal cannabis programs, Senate appropriation request fiscal year 2022. I'm not going to go, well, I will go over this a little bit. Since 1978, marijuana has been federally criminalized and prohibited by Schedule 1 under the Controlled Substances Act. Starting with California in 96, states have chosen to defy federal law by implementing programs to regulate the distribution of cannabis for medical or adult use purposes. And as of March 1st, 2021, some 15 states and Washington, D.C. have legalized the adult use of marijuana, and a total of 36 states, as well as the District of Columbia, regulate access to medical cannabis. Congress first took a step in 2014 to remedy this federal-state conflict by approving an appropriations amendment restricting the Department of Justice from using taxpayers' resources to interfere with state-authorized medical cannabis programs. Why am I not seeing? I thought there was a name to this, but we'll go ahead and skip that. Since its initial approval, this rider has been included in each subsequent annual spending package. So this is something, again, why they're apprehensive, because they haven't seen the new spending package. And this is something that they want to see included in that, basically restricting that funding. While Congress continues to prepare and enact future legislative changes to federal marijuana laws, as demonstrated by the House passage of the MORE Act in the 116th session, it's absolutely critical that the Senate appropriations packages support common sense actions to provide certainty to those providers operating in the state legal marijuana marketplace and to millions of Americans who rely upon them. So you can go through here at your leisure and kind of look a little bit closer at some of the details on here. You'll see that they'll mention which ones are currently in effect and whether they are partisan or bipartisan. Here we have the state legal regulatory medical cannabis protections. Below that, or in the goal of that particular protection is to maintain or expand, or our goal is to maintain or expand those protections. Blocking implementation of DC legal cannabis regulatory frameworks currently in effect. That's a partisan legislation or appropriate amendment in there. We're looking to have that removed. State legal regulatory cannabis protections that are modeled off of bipartisan legislation. These are amendments addressing the emerging. Okay, these are not necessarily in effect below here. Not that I'm seeing. And then I think these are the ones that are recommended or suggested. So I'll let you go through those a little bit more in detail because it's legalese to me. Let me get back to my main page here. So please, what we ask you to do on that, share our action alerts repeatedly on that. We are going to go ahead and share that action alert again. This is for the appropriations restrictions for the DOJ. On spending money to prosecute in legal states. That's really what's going on legislatively. There is a bit we talked about last night from the Biden administration. A reminder that over the 420 week, the Biden administration doubled down yet again on their foolishness about decriminalization and Schedule 2. Again, you can read a bit more about that on our blog. Decriminalization and Schedule 2 is just not not a usable or feasible action. Not at all. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and share that link real quick on the Biden administration and basically being out of step with public opinion, as you see in the link name. Lastly, we're going to finish up with, actually, I have one thing in front of me, but there's sort of kind of two, and they're a little both wishy-washy. From the Senate, still no news on the effort to share, but in the on efforts there. But in the meantime, we're going to keep sharing an alert about the Senate bill to end criminalization that is expected to be released soon. That is what used to be the MORE Act. It will no longer be called the MORE Act in the Senate. It's got a third sponsor, different sponsors now. That's the Schumer, Wyden, and Booker sponsored bill. Again, we don't have a name on it and it hasn't been released. We are expecting to hear something in the very near future. I'm hoping by the end of May or in the next 2 weeks or so. And with a side note on that, or another note on that, from the House, there is a version of the MORE Act that is expected um, to have some news on it. No, I don't know exactly what. It hasn't been submitted or formally introduced yet, but we're expecting to hear some news on that again. I think next week, to see if that will be introduced into the House. Don't quote me on it. Don't share that with any news sources because that is not definitive information at this point. But we are expecting to hear shortly from both the House and the Senate with a very, either bills that were actually what we're expecting from the House is supposed to be much better than what the MORE Act was in the Senate last year, improving upon the protections and the regulatory language in there. Um, I don't have, again, details on it because it hasn't been introduced yet, but that's what we're hearing from Capitol Hill. So keep your fingers crossed. I think either one of those, again, the House version or the Senate version, again, will be including protections, unlike the bill that we mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, the Common Sense Cannabis Reform for Veterans, Small Businesses, and Medical Professionals Act, which gives no protections and no expungement language in there. So that's kind of what we have federal level. Any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns? Again, I apologize to everybody who may have joined me last night and had to listen to that all again. But that's what we got federally and I'm actually kind of excited because I do foresee hearing something in the next week or so, but out of the House and the Senate with medical marijuana, or not medical marijuana, with decriminalization. Of marijuana or descheduling of marijuana legislation proposed. Now, 7:20, that didn't take too long. Excuse me, folks. Excuse me. The only other thing I really had on the agenda, well, I will talk real briefly on state level because we haven't talked about state level legislation in a little bit, except for my ranting about it not going anywhere, and what we are hoping to do in the near future with our local decriminalization process through the ballot initiative process. But and that was again supposed to be a big part of the focus of our cannabis convocation, which was scheduled for July 10th. I did say we're looking to actually reschedule that. After our board meeting on Monday night, and after looking at where we were with our organizational on it, and also where we were looking at the time frame as far as in July, we came to a decision that would be best if we would reschedule it, keeping the same concept, the same theme for the most part, but moving it into right after our state legislature reconvenes in January. I believe their reconvene date is the second Tuesday of January, which in 2022 will be January 11th. I'm thinking we should schedule it on January 15th, like as soon as they get to Columbia. It gives us an opportunity to invite them to our event. It also then, I think, gives us an opportunity to try to invite and or include some legislators that have sponsored decriminalization legislation. I can think of a couple of bills that are out there, and I would love to be able to invite their legislators to come and talk to us about them and sort of educate the public about these bills. I think if we're going to move any of those decrim bills forward, they've all been proposed, as far as I recall. I'd have to look closer at my records, by Democrats, and so I don't really expect to ever see them leave committee. But I'd like to be able to highlight them, and maybe we can find a Republican senator or a legislator to sponsor decrim, no fine, no time decrim here in the state. I'm not saying that those bills that are have been submitted are no fine, no time. I believe they should be, but they're not. I think they're we'll give you a ticket, and once there's a ticket involved, that means you become part of the system. Um, once there's paperwork to be done. Um, uh, I hope nobody's too disappointed by that, but I really think that's it's going to be more effective for us overall as far as our advocacy and being able to try and include some legislators and talk about their legislation at that time when they're back in session. Um, I I actually had my doubts originally when talking about a July date because I knew it was after the end of session, which ends in May. Um, and originally, when I was targeting that date, there was a couple of things. One, I wanted it to kind of near Fourth of July and let Freedom Ring kind of tie it into to Fourth of July and that kind of thing. And the other was I was humored by the 710 being concentrate day. You take that 710, flip it over, it says oil. But again, that's yeah, I don't want to play into stereotypes with that kind of stuff either. Um, So I hope nobody's too upset if somebody has gotten either tickets or paid vendor fees and wants to either um, a refund or we can just leave them on deposit for the January event. We'll let us know as we go forward. Um, any questions, comments, or thoughts on that? Any objections to it or kudos on doing it? Any stuff like that? I know Kristen and I've already talked about it, so we were kind of on board. But and I know I think it was Josh last night. He was sad that we were postponing it. Was that? But again, I think we'll be much more effective. I think we'll be able to put together a much more impactful event. And that's part of it too. And I will touch on that briefly. My health's been crap lately. I have not had the motivation to really get things rolling the way I should and get everybody in line as far as the speakers and the nonprofits that we want to have participating, and also in tracking down vendors that are appropriate for the event. So this will give us a little bit better time frame to get things in order. And little touch of good news, not necessarily cannabis conversation topic. It's usually our monthly meeting topic, but it looks like we have added a couple of people to our volunteer team here. I got some application information just today from one of our followers, and that wants to come in on board as our secretary and help us with our membership coordination. And also last week I was talking with someone, and hopefully we're getting to get them on board as our volunteer coordinator. So membership coordinator and volunteer coordinator and board secretary kind of all rolled into two positions. We're hoping we can get that to fly. And that way we can start getting some of our activities a little bit more, get them scheduled and things like that. The one thing I'm really excited about, if we can get a volunteer coordinator in on board, is we're starting to have people reach out to us from all around the state since we've become the state association. Our volunteer coordinator is actually in the upstate, and if it all rolls out, she's will help us start creating little bands of activists throughout the state, and that's where I'm hoping we can start getting people involved in small groups in different towns to start working with our petition initiatives. I believe I did mention it last night. I will again mention it tonight that I did reach out to National. I'm going to have to follow up with them later on this, probably tomorrow or Thursday, about drafting future petitions for us. We have been using the folks at Sensible Movement Coalition to draft them for us, but I'd like to try and bring them back into the normal house. If we have somebody at National that can do that for us, because I'm just not well versed at drafting multiple petitions for each of the states and what's involved in. There's not a lot involved, I don't think, except for some of the base enactment section information that's listed on here as far as different city codes. So anyway, we'll utilize them if we can still at Sensible Movement Coalition. But if we get someone at National to help us out, that'd be a little preferred. That's all I have tonight, really. Coming up this week, nothing that I can think of urgent. Just keep an eye out for, like I say, hopefully within the next week, hopefully by the next time we meet, we will hear something out of the House and or the Senate on some descheduling legislation. Otherwise, if you need to contact me, you can use the contact page through our website at normalsc.org. Visit us on Facebook. I usually am there more and able to communicate through there more. But we all do also have social media on Instagram and Twitter. Although if you message me through them, sometimes I forget where the messages came from. It takes me a while to find them again. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, South Carolina Normal YouTube channel. And otherwise, and email us if you need to at normalsouthcarolina@gmail.com. There we go. I think I remembered them all at the moment. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you all next Wednesday at 7 p.m. I will try and again give you a little bit more of a heads up on our agenda for next week. And at this point, there is nothing off the top of my head scheduled to talk about. I keep hoping we get some federal information to discuss. That's it for tonight. Thank you for joining me. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon.